video, I'm going to talk through how you answer the Norman 3-mark interpretation question. Now, the 3-mark question goes hand in hand with the 5-mark question, but I'm going to deal with them separately because I think they are quite separate questions, even though they're two parts of the same thing. First off, let's start with the basics and let's look at what an interpretation is, because it's important we have an understanding of what an interpretation is. This is the clear difference between an interpretation and a source. A source is written at the time, an interpretation is written much after the time and is a reflection back on that event. So, for example, if I was writing about the Second World War now, it would be my interpretation because I'm sitting here nearly 80 years after the Second World War thinking back about it. There is a big difference between a source and an interpretation, but they come in many different forms. A source, something that's written at the time, could be a painting, a diary extract, a report, newspaper extract, a photograph, or in the case of the Normans, a chronicle written by a monk or a song written by somebody at the time. An interpretation also comes in a large variety of different forms. It could be a history book, it could be a painting, a film or a film poster, a children's book illustration, a novel, a website. Genuinely, the list is endless. But the thing that you need to understand with this is that when you are given an interpretation on this question, it could be anything. But the really important point here is that it's written after the time. The 3-mark question will always be phrased in this way. In interpretation A, the historian or the artist portrays X as Y. And the X and the Y here are about the event, and then they'll tell you something. So it could be the historian portrays the Battle of Hastings as very bloody, or it could be the historian portrays the harrying of the North as horrendous, or it could be the historian portrays Hereward the Wake as a hero. So it's always X is the event and Y is the description of it. And in the second half, this is the bit that you need to focus on. Identify and explain one way they do this. Now, this is only 3 marks. So all you need to do is look at the interpretation and pick out the way that the historian or the artist is interpreting that event. It's very simple and it can be very short. So as it's 3 marks, I advise that you do no more than 8 lines, and that's if you write big. I think most of you could probably do this in less than 5. Let's look at some questions to understand what you would be doing here. So this is one example. We're going to look at 3. In interpretation A, the artist portrays early Norman castles as a means of control. So interpretation A here, and always read the blurb, is an illustration of the Norman castle at Newcastle. The illustration is on a tourist website about the castle. So all we need to do is look at that picture and work out how the artist has tried to portray castles as a means of control. And you need to pick out one way they've done that. I'm going to pick out some of the things that I think show that. First off, they've put the tower here towering above everything else. That's a means of control because that tower could have been a lookout across all of that region and it would have been scary and imposing. The artist has put that in the top left of this image to portray that, to show that. The artist has also chosen to use a dark sky. He's tried to make it look menacing and scary. That shows that this is about control. The artist has also included bits like this here. These barricades would have basically been to keep this fortified and to keep it basically secure away from anybody else. You could pick any one of those features and write about that. So all I would do is I'd say the artist portrays early Norman castles as a means of control. One way they do this is by making the sky look really black. This makes it menacing because... Here's a second example. In interpretation A, the historian Robert Bartlett argues that the harrowing of the North had a powerful impact on northern England. Identify and explain one way he does this. So it's an extract from his script of his television series in 2010. In 1069, William marched on York and crushed a rebellion. The Normans devastated the north of England. They sacked every village and farmstead as they went. Then William divided his troops into smaller bands who destroyed any crops and livestock they could find. A huge area across northern and central England was laid waste by this scorched earth on the northern rebels. Plotting the settlements destroyed by the Normans shows the scar that was carved across the country by William's army. 16 years later, they were still a desolate wasteland. So all I need to do is pick one way that Bartlett has showed this had a powerful impact. Now this is a written piece rather than an image, but it's the same process. I need to pick out one way that Bartlett in this text has made it clear that it had a big impact. I'm going to show you two things. Firstly, to me, this sentence at the end is key. The fact that he uses the word scar shows how deep and how long-lasting the impact was, because a scar is something that doesn't go away. That, just by picking in on that one individual word, I could write really about the fact that why he chose that word scar. Or I could pick on words that he uses in this first paragraph. Devastated, sacked, destroyed. And the fact that he's picking those words shows me about the impact it had. That's all I need to do. It's as simple as that. Let's look at one more example and then I'll give you some top tips. In interpretation A, the filmmakers argue that Norman rule was harsh. Identify and explain one way they do this. This is a still from the 2017 BBC film for students entitled The Story of Britain. In this scene, William has just been presented with the Domesday Book. And William is saying, "At last, now it is written down, it is law. Now I know everything. Who owns what, where they live, and what they're worth to me." Right, really easy. Again, this is a bit of image and text. And all I need to do is think about what choices the filmmakers have used to show that Norman rule was harsh. Well, there's one big example for me, and that's the fact that William in this picture looks evil. He looks angry, he looks mean, he's got his sword raised as if he is about to cut down on something. That could be one thing that I do, and I pick out. Or I could pick out bits from the text here. Now I know everything. The fact that this shows how controlling William was really proves that. I could pick on either of those features, but I only need to do one. This is only 3 marks. Let's go through some top tips. This question's always going to be presented in this way. In interpretation A, the historian presents X as Y. Identify and explain one way they do it. These are my top tips. Firstly, keep it short. No more than 8 lines, preferably less. Focus on the precise details, whether they are in the image or whether they're in the text. And if you want to add in some extra knowledge, although you don't necessarily have to, but if you want to, use the phrase, "This is not surprising," so that you can add more of your own knowledge about those events that the historian or the artist is interpreting. Good luck.